"You're Windows 95 in a cloud company." That's what he said to me, right to my face, with a smile that barely hid the satisfaction behind it. Brent Langston, new manager, 35 years old, probably fresh off some corporate leadership podcast where he learned how to use condescension as a motivational tool. He leaned back in his ergonomic chair like he'd just delivered a clever punchline, like I was supposed to laugh or nod or quietly pack up my dignity in a cardboard box. I didn't blink. "My name is Nolan Mercer. I'm 48 years old. Senior enterprise sales executive at Core Access Solutions, a mid-tier tech firm based out of Scottsdale. Or, at least, that's what it used to be. Until we got bought out by a cloud-first disruptor with more hashtags than substance and more slides than strategy. I've been here for 24 years, hired when we were still leasing second-hand servers in a strip mall and giving away mouse pads with our logo on them at trade shows. I've onboarded every CRM we've ever used, closed our first $1 million contract, built the pitch deck we still use. Though no one seems to remember that now. I didn't take a vacation for 9 years because next quarter was always the one that would change everything. Bonuses were mythical creatures around here. Everyone talked about them, but I'd never seen one up close. Just a handshake, a thank you, and a fresh quota. I sat in Brent's office last Thursday for what should have been a routine Q3 review. I'd brought the numbers. I always do. Hit 103% to goal, despite the platform changes no one bothered to train us on. Despite Brent freezing marketing support for re-evaluation. I even brought a proposal, smart, targeted, relationship-first outreach using long-term clients I'd nurtured for decades. Brent didn't even look at the folder. He chuckled. "Nolan, I'm not saying what you've done here isn't respectable, but the company's moving in a new direction, more agile, younger, social native. You know how it is." I kept my expression neutral. "Younger? That's not what I said," he replied, smiling wider. "Just modernized, scalable, future-focused." Then he said it. "You're Windows 95 in a cloud company." There was a long pause. Not silence, just a moment where the air changed. I felt it in my chest, that sharp, quiet pressure, like altitude sickness but emotional. Brent must have taken my silence for surrender, because he kept talking. Told me he was realigning account ownership to better reflect the company's new vision. That's when he introduced her. His niece, Margot. Late 20s, bright smile, sharper nails, and an MBA from somewhere with a branding campaign. She walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and sipping from a metal tumbler that probably cost more than my dress shoes. Brent said she'd be shadowing me for a week, learning the ropes. Then she'd take over most of my accounts. Most, as if that was a courtesy. She looked at me with what I assumed she thought was charm. "Could you walk me through the pipeline, Nolan? Just like high-level stuff. I have a yoga class at 5. Brent was already glancing at his phone, dismissing me without needing to say the words. The room suddenly felt colder, or maybe that was just me realizing I was no longer in it. I stood up, picked up my folder, the one Brent never opened, and tucked it under my arm. "Of course," I said calmly. "Let me get something from my desk first." They both nodded like I was doing them a favor. I walked out of Brent's office, past the rows of glass-walled cubicles I helped design, past the framed plaque of our first $10 million year with my name etched into the acrylic. My desk hadn't changed in 10 years. Still had the photo of my daughter from her 5th grade science fair. Still had the coffee mug with the faded Core Access logo. Still had the notepad where I'd sketched ideas for a customer referral app that won us the Regional Sales Award back in 2013. I didn't grab anything, just kept walking. Past the kitchen, where the interns laughed over cold brew. Past the HR girl who pretended not to notice I wasn't smiling. Past reception, where Margot's designer purse now sat like it owned the place. I pushed open the door to the parking lot. The sun was blinding. Arizona October. Clear, sharp heat that made your shirt cling to your back. I got into my car, started the engine, and sat there for a minute. Not thinking, just breathing. Something settled in my chest, Not rage, not grief. Something quieter. They think I shut down, but really I just booted into something new. They gave her my accounts, but I still had the keys to the kingdom. She didn't know it, of course. Neither did Brent. They thought account ownership lived in a drop-down menu in Salesforce. They thought trust transferred with a few keystrokes and a welcome email. But legacy doesn't work like that. Legacy is built in the gray areas. Handshakes at trade shows, favors cashed in after midnight calls, and the kind of quiet reputation that doesn't show up in quarterly dashboards. 24 years ago, this company was nothing more than a dusty office over a tanning salon in North Scottsdale. 6 of us, 1 server, and a dream. We used fax machines and AOL emails. I used to cold call from a printed list and manually log notes on legal pads. I was employee number 7, hired to build sales from scratch. That's exactly what I did. I created our first pipeline, not in software, but in relationships. I brought in healthcare, manufacturing, aerospace. I didn't just sell. I installed software when tech was short, handled invoicing when finance was buried, and flew across the country on red eyes to fix what our support team couldn't. I introduced our first CRM when we outgrew spreadsheets, built the first training manual because no one else would. I onboarded. The people who onboarded the people who now ignore me in meetings. When Margot fumbled the Zenith account, I wasn't surprised. Zenith was one of our top 3 legacy clients. 15 years of loyalty built on personalized service and quarterly calls that I never missed. Margot sent them a templated renewal email and forgot to adjust the pricing tier. They called to complain. She panicked and messaged me on Slack. "Hey Nolan, quick cue, Zenith is saying the price is off. Do you know if they have some kind of old contract or special deal?" No greeting, no apology. Just an emoji and a question she couldn't answer. I replied 3 words, "Not my account." 10 seconds later, "Right, haha, just figured you'd know. Let me know if you have any notes I should send them. I'm kind of freaking out TBH." I stared at the screen, reread her message twice, then slowly typed, "I'm not authorized to support that account." She didn't respond. That night, I stayed late at the office. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I'd spent 2 decades being the memory bank for a company that suddenly decided amnesia was a strategy. So I started backing up. Files, PDFs, email threads, client contracts I'd negotiated, memos from the early years. I opened Outlook and searched my name. It brought up thousands of results. One from 2006, a founder thanking me for saving a government contract that would have sunk us financially. Another from 2011. If there's ever a VP promotion in sales, Nolan is the obvious choice. None ever came. I found a spreadsheet, HR comp plan revisions. Brent's name was highlighted. His Q4 bonus was tied to strategic headcount realignment. A side note in the margin, legacy optimization. That's what I was to them. A system too old to maintain. By midnight, I had 4 flash drives full of proof. Not secrets, not sabotage, just facts. Documentation of what I'd built and what they were now throwing away. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, but what I'd made, what I'd shaped over 2.5 decades, that part they'd never understand. The next morning, I came in early, beat the interns, sat at my desk like it was any other day. Brent walked past, nodded like we were teammates, like I hadn't seen the line item that put a price on pushing me out. Margot followed an hour later in oversized sunglasses and a loud phone call about weekend plans. Neither of them noticed when I stepped into the stairwell and made a call. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm in. Just need a few days to get things aligned." The voice on the other end paused. "You're sure?" "They think I'm running on fumes," I said. "But the system they're standing on? I wrote the damn source code. And I hadn't even started deleting things yet. I didn't just build the foundation. I am the foundation. They forget that part. Or maybe they never knew. Maybe they thought the systems just appeared. Self-assembled by the magic of venture capital and cloud migration. But long before the UX refreshes and Slack emojis, I was sitting in a windowless room with 2 engineers and a whiteboard that still had drywall dust on it. The software licensing model they used to bill Fortune 100 clients. That was mine. Designed on a legal pad with 2 pens and a calculator I stole from accounting. The system they brag about now, the recurring billing cycles, usage tiers, auto-renewals? We called it the taproot because everything grew from it. Even now, with the new interface and APIs bolted on like limbs from another body, the core engine runs on the bones I laid down. Half the sales team doesn't even understand how it works, but when something breaks, they still come knocking. Quietly. Off the record. Because they know I'll have the answer. Last week, Margot strutted across the stage at the All Hands and accepted the Q3 Sales Star Award from Brent. I didn't go. I saw the announcement in the Slack feed. Company-branded confetti flying behind her profile pic. Her caption, "Honored to bring Zenith back for another 3 years. Hard work pays off." Zenith. The same client who left her on red until she forwarded them a pitch deck she found in the shared drive. The same deck I created back in 2015, custom-tailored language. Notes in the margins for tone and objections. It even included a renewal script. Word for word, it was the one I wrote in 2009 when the CTO almost pulled out after a billing error. She copied the whole thing, then used my name to get the call. "Hey, Nolan said you might want to talk through the updated contract." They called her back that afternoon. 3 days later, Brent stood behind her on stage with that same toothy grin, clapping like he'd just discovered fire. The team cheered. Champagne flutes, a digital badge in the sales portal. I watched it all from my laptop at a coffee shop across town, sipping black coffee and waiting for my next meeting. Across from me sat Richard Lee, former CTO of Core Access, the man who greenlit the first version of Taproot and helped me wire it into the platform. He'd left 6 months after the acquisition, said the culture changed, said Brent's vision was just noise wrapped in buzzwords. Now he was leading product at a stealth mode competitor. "You look good," he said. "Feel better." He glanced at his watch. "I know what Brent's doing. Nepotism's just the sugar coating. He's killing the roots and replacing them with gloss. People like you get erased first." "I'm already gone," I said. He looked at me. "But not done." I smiled. "No, not done." Back at the office, nobody noticed I wasn't at the All Hands. Nobody asked where I'd been. That's the thing about being erased. They do it in layers. First, they remove your voice, then your name, then they put someone else in your seat and call it evolution. But I hadn't left. Yet. Last month, Brent almost blew a deal with a long-term government client. Offered them new pricing that violated a clause in their original contract. Legal flagged it late. He came to me in a panic. Late-night Slack ping, no greeting. "Need your eyes on this, they're threatening to walk. Can you call Terry? You know how to handle him." I called, pulled every favor I had left, kept the deal afloat. Brent never said thank you, just messaged, handled, appreciated. A week later, he gave Margot my parking spot. That's when I stopped reacting, started rebuilding. Not with code or contracts, but with something quieter, deeper. I made a list, not of enemies, but of architects. The ones like me. The ones who'd helped build this thing before it forgot its own blueprint. I made calls, I bought coffee, I listened more than I spoke. While they were updating their CRM to remove me from account history, I was laying groundwork. Not for revenge, for replacement. And they'd never see it coming. Because ghosts don't show up on the org chart. But they move through walls just fine. They didn't fire me. They upgraded without checking dependencies. That's the part they'll regret the most. In software, if you don't check dependencies before an upgrade, the system looks fine. Until it collapses. That's what Brent never understood. He thought I was just legacy code. He didn't realize I was still running under the hood, quiet, embedded, essential. The board received the whistleblower file on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't anonymous. I signed it with my name, title, and hire date. I included screenshots, PDFs, time-stamped records, Slack messages where Brent referred to me and two others as redundant fossils, forwarded emails where he hinted to finance that projected Q3 growth just needed a little rounding up, a memo showing his niece's promotion was greenlit before the hiring panel even met, deleted calendar invites that removed me from critical renewal meetings, a spreadsheet where Brent inserted manual overrides to inflate his team's numbers ahead of his bonus approval. I packaged everything cleanly. A single zip file named Coriaxis Integrity Review. I sent it to all 7 board members, BCC'd. Then I went silent. The first client dropped 2 days later, Northwell Energy, a 15-year partner who signed their renewals with a handshake and a one-line email. I'd nurtured that account since their first 12K install. Margot missed their renewal window because she was speaking on a panel about disruptive sales culture in Austin. They'd emailed her, twice, no response. They didn't send a formal cancellation, just wired back the Q4 invoice with decline to renew in the memo field. The second drop was bigger. Lyricom. Annual value, $1.1 million. They called Margot's extension, left a voicemail. She never checked it. When Brent followed up, they told him they were pivoting platforms. But I knew the truth. I still had friends on the inside. They said the new rep didn't know how to access the Tier 2 reporting dashboard, said she told them to Google it. After that, Brent started unraveling. He sent emails at 11:47 p.m., subject lines like urgent retention blitz and who's owning client experience. All caps, exclamation points, bold red text. He blamed onboarding, then pricing, then finally Margot. That weekend, she disappeared from Slack. Status set to out of office. Under review. They tried to clean up the damage, rolled out a customer satisfaction survey, spun up a legacy client experience task force, reassigned accounts like shuffling chairs on a sinking ship. But clients didn't want chairs. They wanted me. I didn't come back. Not yet. Instead, I went further underground. A reporter from a mid-level tech publication had reached out months earlier about toxic culture in post-acquisition startups. I'd turned them down at the time, but now, with an NDA in place and a confidentiality clause tight enough to strangle a snake, I gave them the outline. Not a tell-all, just enough to draw blood. Brent's bonus, tied to strategic headcount optimization, looked a lot like targeted elimination of older staff. The CRM kickbacks, referral dollars from a vendor he'd quietly looped into our stack, were traceable. The niece? Hired under a fabricated title to bypass nepotism protocols. The article would drop the week after the board vote. HR emailed me 3 days before that vote. Subject, transition discussion invitation. Nolan, we'd like to schedule an exit interview with you this week to discuss your role and potential handoff responsibilities. I replied within the hour. You'll want to hold that meeting until after next Thursday's board session. They didn't respond, but Brent did. I saw him pacing in the lobby the next morning. Phone pressed to his ear, face pale, sweat around the collar of his custom-tailored shirt. He didn't see me standing at the edge of the mezzanine, watching through the glass. The man who once smirked at me like I was a museum exhibit now looked like he was searching for a fire alarm to pull. They'd upgraded their system, but I was still wired into the mainframe, still feeding the logs, still writing the kill script. And Thursday was almost here. 5 days later, he got a downgrade. From cloud executive to jobless. The board met Thursday morning in a closed session. No cameras, no observers, just 7 members, the general counsel, the CFO, and Brent. I was called in halfway through. They'd all read the report by then. They had the audit results in front of them. They had the Slack logs, the modified spreadsheets, the falsified Q3 forecast, every piece of it documented, time-stamped, and verified by internal compliance. Brent sat stiffly in his chair, sweat collecting at the back of his neck. He didn't look at me when I walked in. I took the seat across the table, slid the final document across the glass surface. It was a reconciliation report, quiet, clinical, damning. A $400,000 discrepancy between what Brent had reported to finance and what had actually been booked. hidden in line items, manually overridden formulas, and cleverly labeled adjustments, just days before he triggered his bonus clause. The CFO spoke first. We confirmed all of it. Compliance nodded. Every number. Brent opened his mouth, but no one was listening anymore. The general counsel closed her folder. This qualifies as financial misrepresentation and breach of ethical conduct, combined with the nepotism, vendor kickbacks, and performance inflation. The recommendation is immediate termination for both Mr. Langston and Ms. Langston. Brent stood like he was about to argue, then thought better of it. He didn't make a speech, didn't apologize, just turned and walked out the door. I watched him through the glass as 2 security officers met him in the hallway. He didn't resist, didn't even look back. They walked Margot out later that afternoon. She didn't cry, just kept her sunglasses on and scrolled her phone like none of it mattered. The Slack announcement came 20 minutes later. Leadership update. Effective immediately, Brent Langston is no longer with the company. No reason given. No thank you for his service. HR called me later that day, offered me a return package. Director of sales, full authority, team of my choosing, even mentioned stock options and a public apology from the board. I declined. I'd already signed with a competitor, strategic consultant, higher pay, fewer hours. And the offer came from Richard Lee himself, the former CTO who remembered where the foundation came from. He said they were rebuilding, carefully, thoughtfully, and they needed someone who still understood what it meant to lay bricks instead of sell buzzwords. When HR asked what I wanted listed as my exit title for internal records, I thought about it for a second. Legacy Architect, I said, and make sure it's spelled correctly. I spent that night cleaning out my inbox, deleted the junk, archived the things that mattered. I logged into Slack one final time. Messages pinged in from colleagues I hadn't heard from in months. Congratulations, apologies, a few brave thank yous. I didn't answer any of them. I clicked on my profile, scrolled to my status bar, and typed in the last message I would ever send on the system I helped build. Windows 95, shutting down. Then I clicked log out.